Alright, today what I'm going to be looking into is this Yard Machines MTD 14 horse 38 inch cut. Got a Briggs single cylinder 14.5 overhead valve, and I'll show you what it's doing. So as you can see, we got a pretty good amount of smoke coming out the exhaust. I just took this on a trade. I know nothing about it. What I have done is just give it a general go through. It had a lot of oil leaking there, so I replaced the gasket where the dipstick tube went in, and we could see it had a lot of oil down there. It had some wet oil right now there, and top of the valve cover looks like it has got a little oil. And I want to take a look in here to see if my suspicions could be correct. And yes, my brand new oil filter is slathered in oil. This, I don't know if you can tell, is completely pooled up in there. There's oil everywhere, and where that's coming from is the crankcase breather vent, most likely. So in a situation like this, you'd say maybe the oil's over full. And let's check that. Just had it ready. Wipe that stick off. A little warm, not too hot. And we are actually a hair low. So we are not over full. I don't see that it, another thing that could happen in this case is your carburetor float can go bad and the bottom will be all full of oil and the top will be all full of gas, but that's not the case. It doesn't smell like gas, and there is no extra wetness on the dipstick there. So I think I know what it is, and I'll bring you along the process. Alright, we got the tractor that smokes terrible, so I'm going to start by taking the hood off because I need to get at the front of the motor, and the easiest way on this one is to go right up front there and take those whole rods off. Alright, so I got two strut rods, one starts there, one that starts there. They go back to the hood there to support it. I'm going to take them off on this side because I don't want them dangling out when I take the front end off right near where I'm working. I'm going to start removing the hood by taking two bolts, one there and one on the other side. Take that off. That'll take the front end off. I'm going to take the headlights off. You can just unclip them. Yeah. I'm going to take the lower ones off first, so that way when I get over here I'll have something to hold on to so the whole hood doesn't go tipping forward. I just did the lower ones off camera. Different size. Got that out of the way. Now we can see It's just dripping oil out the air cleaner. It's pretty wet here. It's been wet many times before. There's a lot of signs even after I degreased this engine. Now it's starting to all make sense. It's because that oil is trying to get out anywhere and everywhere it can. Now, as many of you sharp-eyed viewers as there are, you probably see where I'm heading with this. I'm heading for the valve area, in particular the head gasket. I believe it's blown, and I'll take a spare gasket and show you my theory of what's going on before we even open it up. So you may say, why would a head gasket send oil overflowing into the PCV system, positive crankcase ventilation tube, that feeds the air cleaner, and why would all the gaskets on the engine be leaking, and how does this all come together? Well, this is a spare head gasket I have, the one that's going to go on this machine, and as you can see, it's got a lot of areas for bolts to go down, and it's got the cylinder area there. And what it can do, and what I think happened on this engine, is it blew out into the area. There's valves here, valve push rods area, and I believe it's blowing the compression gases into the crankcase, into this area, which ends up in the crankcase, and pressurizing my entire engine, and it's just getting out anywhere it can, which makes sense why the dipstick tube was leaking, why there's oil around the valve cover, and why the PCV system is blowing oil into that air cleaner, is because all this compression is being, well, much of it is being lost into here, and you know, turning it into an air compressor, and you know, pressurizing the whole crankcase. So that's where I'm heading. On this particular engine, I'm just going to start by unplugging the spark plug. I have aftermarket bolts on the exhaust manifold. Yours may be Star or Hex. I can't remember what they were initially, but mine will be just regular Hex. I'll start by taking that off. We'll take the carburetor off. We'll take some of the tins off, and we'll get into this engine. Maybe we can just tip that up enough without having to remove everything, or maybe not. We'll see. I think we can sneak it out of there. Bring it around the other side. Alright, let's get that carburetor off of there. There's more than one way to do this job. You could technically leave the carburetor on there and disconnect everything from that side. I don't think that's going to be the best case scenario for this engine. Now I'm going to take the valve cover off. Sometimes there's actually bolts inside here that hold the head on. Makes a nice drip tray too. This one actually doesn't look like it does have bolts inside. Interesting. Some do. And then we got to get all the head bolts off, and that head should come off pretty straightforward. Let's see what size. I think they're half. Did I get that one? I got that one, I guess. Oh, it's this one I didn't get. Well, there we are. Alright, sharp-eyed viewers can already see it. I believe my theory was correct, and I will prove it to you in a close-up. So, if you look right there, you can see where that is blown. That head gasket is absolutely 100% confirmed blown. Exactly where I thought it would be, because it's a bit of a common problem. The reason it blows there is it doesn't really have full equal clamping force. You got good clamping force all the way around, but here, nothing really. Only here and here. So it kind of gives it a weak spot. So, educated guess, this time we win. So I have it out now. I took the gasket off the engine, and you can see it's blown not only on this side, because this gasket is sort of multi-layered. It's not only blown there, but on the side that was facing out. So pretty heavy blow through there. It blows from the pressurized area to the area with no pressure. It's just the natural thing that's going to happen, and it makes the whole engine look like it's blown, but in this case, just a gasket. For this repair, I bought a gasket kit which contains the head gasket, the valve cover gasket, exhaust gasket, intake gasket, and the valve stem seal. I may or may not use those items, but I have them here in case. A lot of times you can get by with some gasket sealer if the gaskets don't rip, but I got them right here, so why don't I just go ahead and put them on, huh? So on this particular engine, I already wiped out some of this. This is a little tin. It deflects the air. I've already wiped that out a little bit, but you can see there's a lot of oil down here, and this is the muffler area. And all that's going to happen is when I turn it back on, when I start it back up, that's just all going to sit there and burn and make smells and smoke and look suspicious to a would-be buyer. Of course, we're going to have everything fixed, so there would be no alarm, but they wouldn't know that. But in this case, this side is literally just clipped on here, and the other side's held on by one screw. So I'm going to actually take this out and see how much oil's in the tray there, and I'm going to clean that too, just so we don't have any hot oil smells when we get this put back together. So on the side of the engine, this one just has a clip on the what would be its right side, tractor right side anyway, and then on the left there's just this one screw there, 5/16, and I think that thing, there may be an additional one, but we're almost there, so it's going to be easy to take out so I can clean it properly. Okay, correction. There's one going up from the bottom, which I don't really have an easy way of getting to accurately, so I'm just going to tip it down and be able to clean it like that. I've just tipped it down a little bit, and then I can get in there. There's a bolt going from there, and it'd be difficult to put it back in. far as the head itself, I'll need to scrape all this. I may even run a file ever so slightly just to see. Sometimes the bolt areas get dished out a little bit just to make sure she's totally flat. The push rods, the top one, which I assume is steel, is the top. The bottom one is the brighter one, which I assume is aluminum. Just for if yours fell out while you were working on it. Mine happened to stay in there, and we can see which ones. And the same thing on the block side. You just want to clean 100% of the oil off, clean the dirt off, make sure she's dead flat as much as possible, and then we're ready to reinstall the gasket. Okay, let's put our new head gasket on there. Alright, I got my head cleaned up like I like it. We'll go and put this on, not worrying about the push rods at this time. It's got a couple pins that help locate it. Just butt it up, don't tighten anything yet. Now these go on with torque wrench only. The torque on these fasteners above all else on the engine is critical. That was partial torque, and then I'll go for the full torque. Look up the torque spec for your individual engine. I will not bias you with the torque spec for this engine. And there's also a proper torque sequence, usually starting from the center and working your way out. in a crisscross pattern. I'm just going over all these at least twice to make sure I don't miss one. And for good measure, because as you can see, I'm using an extension, which you probably shouldn't, I'm going to give it an extra 5 inch-pounds to account for any losses of torque. I'm just guessing on that amount of loss. There we go. Alright, so as far as the push rods, yes, this one is lighter. That's the aluminum one, the bottom one. And this is the steel one, the top one. We can see there's a wear mark here where it used to wear on this plate, so I'm going to put them back in the exact same way they came out. And they'll go back into a little pocket in the engine there. And then, in theory, you could compress this spring with your fingers and get that all to go. Make sure some of these, yeah, these have the removable spinners or whatever you want to call them, tappet caps, whatever. I don't care what you call them. But in theory, you could take that and do that, and you'd probably be close enough as far as your valve lash goes. But I'm going to set these, being that we already got the cover off, the hood off. It'll never be an easier time to do so. Again, this one has got the wear mark here. Put that towards the direction it was before. This spring is a little stouter, but still doable by hand. And you can see we have an absolute mile too much travel. So I wouldn't have got away with this time, just changing the head gasket and not adjusting. This exhaust valve is terrible loose. Okay, so to set the valve clearances, we'll loosen both of these. These particular ones happen to have Torx locks in the middle. And I think it's a T15. Pretty sure it's a T15 or T20, somewhere right in there on this engine. I think it's T20. I should have backed those out first, but they came out easy, so. Then this gives us our adjustment. In is tighter, out is looser. So we'll just get them close. They were way backed off. Wow. Then you want to do this with your piston at top dead center. Switch some tools around here so this is easier. There we go. Boy, and there is not much room between too much and too little. We are a mile from where we started. And let me look up the spec for the top, which would be the exhaust. Okay, if I can get them both locked down right there, we're good. Oftentimes when you turn the lock, the other part wants to turn, and vice versa, so I'll give it my best shot. You could hold it with a wrench also on the outside. I'm just going to get them halfway locked in, and let's see if it holds the setting. Nope, that one moved already. I saw it go. So I'm going to have to hold back on those with the wrench while I try to tighten them. Well, it isn't 7/16. 10mm of all culprits. Who knew? Okay, so let me just try to lock these where they are. Okay, I think I have the intake where I want it. If I can get it locked right there. There we go. A little loose. Nah. I'm gonna leave it. And let's do the exhaust. Too loose. Just a matter of trial and error till you get it to feel right. And remember how I told you while you got it off, you just put the new gasket you have? I lied. That gasket is so perfect, I'm just going to put a little sealant on there and put it right back where she goes. Just a little sealer. You don't have to squish it on there too terrible. And you don't have to put them on there that tight. That's all she needs. Get our muffler fish back down its hole. There we go. Try to fit our gasket, get the first one lined up if we can. We got one started. Oh, hell yeah. Spark plug. That is surprising they run that right on the muffler. Maybe it should be, there we go. It's supposed to be up there. There we go. Now she goes around. Don't know if you can see that there. Now it goes around the muffler. It was laying on it. I had it too low. And this, I will have to find a companion bolt for. This is the front of the engine. The shroud bolt or cowl, or the, you know, some people call this the tin, whatever. This particular one was missing a bolt. I found out as I got into this. Here, folks, is a classic handyman's dilemma. You have an original bolt with what would be a 3/8 inch head needed for socket, and you have a replacement bolt with only 7/16 size. Do you put one of the originals so it's as original as possible and then one of the shiny weird ones? Or do you put two shiny matching weird ones? I think we're going with two of the same, so one wrench, we'll take them both off in the future. And did I mention they're stainless steel, so we won't have to worry about them rusting and cracking off inside that aluminum head. Oh yeah. Back on what is the left side of the engine. I'm going to get the hole lined up there for the shroud bolt. It's got a ground wire. This one happens to have the electric solenoid. Look at that oil still dripping out of there from before. It's got a ground wire here for the fuel shutoff solenoid, so that needs to be grounded well. Alright, and again, our intake gasket is in perfect condition. It came off clean at the piece here. I am going to reuse it. I'm going to put just ever so slight amount of sealant on that, just so we don't possibly get a vacuum leak or worse yet, suck dirt. We'll get it lined up here. I got some sealant on the engine side. Wrong size. Alright, now before I put the hood back on, I'm going to give it a little test. I've wiped out all the oil I can here. Here's where that P crankcase ventilator comes up. So as long as we fixed it, we shouldn't see much coming out of there. Now what we might see is some smoke still coming out of the muffler because we pumped plenty of oil into the exhaust pipe, the muffler, everywhere exhaust related. The cylinder itself would have excessive oil, right? Well, no, actually that wouldn't. But anyway, we're going to just start it before I put everything back together just to make sure the repair is good. Alright, looks good. Much less smoke. I didn't let it warm up much because I want to put the hood stuff back on before everything gets too hot. But it'll probably start burning more for a little bit as it heats up. But I think we're good. So if I was to give this about a half hour to an hour of runtime, I imagine all the smoke would dissipate from all the oil that it had pushed out from every orifice it could. Every gasket, every seal was leaking due to the crankcase being pressurized from the cylinder pushing across the gasket into it. So once that oil burns off, it'll be a good running mower for someone. I hereby declare at least the head gasket on this mower Wildwood certified.